It'll be myself, Heidi Steffen with TitanTV. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing. I'll go over some of our products and how that's related to 3.0. Then I'll hand it over to Guy Hadland from Unisoft. He's CTO there, and he will go over how that goes through the entire ecosystem and then out to the consumer's television, all for Guide 3.0. So with that, I wanted to kind of go and start with a little background. If you're not familiar with TitanTV, we are actually located out of Iowa, the home of the Field of Dreams movie scene location. And if you were aware, we were supposed to have that big Field of Dreams game between the Yankees and White Sox, and it happened in 2020. It got moved to 2021. We're excited. It's this August. I wore my jersey today to kind of support that. So if you're ever in the area, let us know. And as you know, TitanTV is always trying to stay in top. We're trying to go the distance to bring you what you need for guide data. And that's the same with 3.0 and ESG Data Service. So you may or may not know, we do have what we call an online scheduling tool, MediaStar Scheduler. A lot of our stations today use this to build out their schedule. The nice thing is this is going to be just as easy to use for 3.0 next-gen television. So what I want to show and go over today is, as we know today with 3.0, your station, if you're full power, you still have to broadcast your 1.0 signal for 5 years, and it needs to be a simulcast. And then you're thinking, do I really need to manage 2 different schedules when they're exactly the same? Our MediaStar scheduling tool allows you to manage that programming on your 1.0 signal and easily distribute to the 3.0 without having to do any double entry of data. Also, let's say you're also then streaming that maybe on a live streaming Roku device, but you don't have access or content rights to then broadcast all of it. You can still maintain the main programming on your 1.0 channel and then distribute to the other ones. So I'll just kind of walk through a simple how you're able to do that presentation. And if you are ever wanting to get more information or get a demo or walk through this, just send us an email to customercare@TitanTV and we will set up that demo. So today I set up my recurring event for today or even this whole week. And I want to go ahead now send it over to my 3.0 channel that I'm sending out via ESG Data Service. I can either pick a day, I can pick the whole time slot. I'm going to actually, uncheck these, and I'm going to just do 2 days. So I'm going to distribute all of these programs, and then I already have rules set up in my back end to distribute to multiple channels. I'm going to, at this point, I'm just going to send it to my demo 6, which is actually my 3.0 channel. I can also add to my demo 7, which is my live streaming. And I do have programs or rules set up on some of the program time slots on my live streaming that does not have rights to stream what I currently do over the air. So I'm gonna go ahead and distribute. And I can check the distribution to see how things are going. You can see here what I've done in previous. I have done up to 416 events that I distributed from my main channel to my other channels. And then I'm just going to then go back to the main grid and go to my demo 6, and I've updated my programming. I can too, if for some reason, let's say this is off time zone, maybe it's not your 3.0, it's another repeater, you're able to do off time zone. But now for me to get that out to my 3.0 ESG data service, I need to publish. So remember in MediaStar, publish is what actually then pushes it out to PSUP for 1.0, and then it pushes it out to ESG, which is PSUP in the 3.0 world. So I'm just going to go and I can go in my demo 5 and my demo 6. Whoop, if I can click them, publish, and now you'll see that succeeded. The nice thing about this system as well is it's also updated the guide on my website, which I'll show you how we have both the 1.0 and 3.0 schedule on my guide. And then now it's pushed out to the PSUP on the FTP side and then directly out to the ESG data service, where Guy will show us how that will change through the workflow. So what I want to do here is show you my guide. So this is the TitanTV NEXTGEN guide that I have put up on my website. Here is my main demo 5, and then here's my 3.0. So I have actually even added to my logo as a NEXTGEN logo just to kind of show here's this is a 3.0 channel. As we know, consumers, we want to promote it as NEXTGEN television, but this gives then another opportunity for me as a station to inform consumers of my NEXTGEN. And then there's that live streaming channel that I talked about. It is all there on the guide. So Chelsea, do we have any questions yet regarding MediaStar and how we can populate that 3.0 data and send it out to ESG?
We don't currently have any questions. However, I do want to remind people that on your dashboard, there is a question section where you can type in any questions that you have, as well as a chat section as well. So feel free to use those throughout the presentation. Again, for those that just jumped on kind of late, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
And with that, we will be recording this, and we are recording this, and we will send it out after this, probably in a day or so. One of the things I talked about, if you want more information on MediaStar, you want to walk through how you can set this up on your own MediaStar, or if you're interested in testing it out or demoing it, go ahead. If you have MediaStar already, just go to your homepage. If you need to set up additional training, just click on this training. You'll be able to actually schedule right onto Chelsea's calendar and schedule that in. Otherwise, you can send an email just to, like I stated, to customer care at TitanTV. It goes to myself, Chelsea, Marge, Dwayne, and Morgan, and we'll go ahead and answer all your questions. So with that, I want to pause, and now we're going to go ahead and change it to Guy. Guy is going to now show us, once we send it out via MediaStar into the ESG Data Service, where does it go from there?
Right. Thank you, Heidi, very much indeed. I'd like to start by explaining a little bit about our entire delivery chain here at Unisoft. Starting on the top left-hand corner, we have an automation system like any other broadcaster. The two that we're working with right now is the Broadstream Oasis player and the digital broadcast. Linear acoustic, if we want to insert variance VPI watermarks or Nielsen watermarks, that's an optional element in our chain. Our key preferred encoder of choice is the ATEM Titan Live, which takes either HD, SDI or IP input. We're very fond of the Titan because it's also a dash packager, which is required in the ATSC 3 world. Those segments that are generated by the ATEM are pushed to our root server from strategy and technology called ATCaster, which actually also, of course, generates the NRT carousels, which carry Heidi's guide data. So you can see here we essentially every 24 hours go to the guide data feed from the Titan have kindly provided us, and we run a program that runs overnight that populates and generates ATSC 3 guide data, and it uses the REST APIs provided by ATCaster. It pushes the data to the NRTs and they're delivered that way. The output of the ATCaster is a number of multicast sessions. UDP multicast goes into the broadcast gateway or scheduler. Our preferred scheduler is an NSYS SmartGate scheduler. Optionally, we can go directly into the gates air or via an external exciter. We're working with the Pro Television exciter, and then the signal goes out that way and over the air. So looking at some of these components in a little bit more detail, starting with the encoder, we have configured 3 services here. This UHD feed is from, in fact, an RGR player. It's 4K. It's 4 times 3G HDI going into the back of the ATEM. And then I think I'm feeding NBC somewhere from our Edge QAM that's been collected off the roof as an ATSC1 signal. These services are pushed, as I said, to ATCaster. ATCaster looks very much like this, the UI. 3 services plus an NRT carousel, which is the mechanism for carrying the guide data. And this is pretty much a standard configuration for 3.0, which is NRT. You'll see here we're actually using 2 NRT carousels on service service 99, and those carry the 3 files that is generated by the ESG generator and sent out further down the delivery chain. We get here to the NEXTGEN broadcast gateway, and you can look at the dashboard. You'll see that the gateway we have here is configured for 2 PLPs, physical layer pipes. So we are, in this case, putting the UHD signal, which is around 7 megabits per second or thereabouts, in the first PLP, and the other 2 services in the second PLP. You'll also notice on the side that the guide data is being carried, I think, in PLP 1. There's the ability in the smart gate to map services to different PLPs, and indeed, if you wish to put the LLS in each PLP, you can do that using the screen. Finally, we've defined an output here, which is the STL. This is going locally to the, could optionally go to the Pro TV. The UI looks a lot like this, although this is actually configured, as you might notice, for 8 VSB. We're doing some 8 VSB tests here today. So the 3.0 signal is going to the gates air, which we have at 3 watts. It includes an integrated ATSC 3 exciter. The signal looks quite reasonable. And then finally out to 2 TVs next door, hopefully. It takes a while for them to come up. Yeah, there it is. So we have, in this case, we're using a Samsung. We should hurry up. Takes a little while for the camera to grab the image. So on the right is the Sony TV, which is showing our rebroadcast NBC service. This is our UHD. It's not very clear, unfortunately, but you can see that this is our UHD service on the Samsung guide, and this has been this originated from our version of MediaStar, and you can see, if you can see this, if you saw the screen, that the content that we've created here, which of course is quite is fictional. This is the guide data that our ESG generator will go and grab every 24 hours and push to ATCaster, and we see it on the television, TVs next door. Maybe a better way of viewing it is with our companion product, TS Monitor, which shows us the services that we're delivering out of ATCaster, and it also shows the guide data that we're delivering. So it's a UHD content. I didn't put any graphics in there. This, of course, is Judge Judy, so that would be CBS, and then Days of Our Lives, NBC. You can see the graphics that Heidi has been sending to us, and that goes out directly to the transmitter. If anybody has any questions at this point, I'd be very happy to answer them.
Yes, we have one question, it looks like, and that question is, do we need to reach out to Titan to add ATSC 3.0 to our station?
Yes, again, just reach out to customer care, let them know that you need to add that into your MediaStar, and then that you want to distribute from, let's say it's your DT1 to that 3.0 channel, and then we can help walk you through and get that set up. We'll also make sure then that the ESG that's set up with that, or we set up the ESG data service as well, is connected directly to that channel in your MediaStar. So whenever you make any changes, it automatically updates that ESG.
Yeah. But if the question is more about, what do you need to do to deploy an ATSC 3 service, we'd be very helpful to please talk to you more about that. I mean, one of the things that Unisoft does, and I probably should have started by saying that, is we are basically a system integrator and a reseller for all these components. So you can buy a complete delivery system from us. It pre-configured either in a rack or a shipping case, which we call the Unirack, or you can, and I can show you a photograph of it, looks a lot like that, for instance, which is the one we're currently using in the office, or we can provide the individual components and the integration into your broadcast station, whichever setup you already have.
And would they reach out to you, Guy, or is there a contact that they should be reaching out to?
Either myself or Audrey, who works with me, would be the key contact points to discuss that. I mean, we're doing a lot of testing right now because, you know, what's really happened recently, and, you know, things were slowed down a bit because of last year, but now, you know, the two TVs that are next door were both bought from retail shops. So one was the Samsung 8K came from Costco, and then the Sony, you know, was Best Buy. But you buy these TVs, you turn them on, and they're ATSC 3 ready, and that's taken us a long time to get to that stage. And you know, there's the benefits of all these things. Quite interestingly enough, I have this problem every day at about 1 o'clock where our NBC signal gets very bad, the incoming ATSC 1 signal. And I believe it's because we have a building site next door with cranes and things which is affecting our service between 1 to about 2:15. And that sort of thing generally with ATSC 3 is not going to happen. The modulation mechanism used in ATSC 3 is vastly superior to the 8 VSB of ATSC 1. The encoding is far more efficient. It's a difference between HEVC in ATSC 3 and MPEG-2 in ATSC 1. And, you know, some of the tests we've done for people like News Press and Gazette, we've delivered 10 or 11 1080p services in a 6 megahertz channel, which is absolutely spectacular because, you know, that you can provide a lot more content, you can use it for data casting. There's a whole slew of things that you could use this extra bandwidth for.
And Guy, in your testing, from the time that you make a change in MediaStar and publish it, how quickly does it update into the system or on the television in general practice?
Generally, and we've been doing a lot of tests recently with guide data, interestingly enough, but it takes 2 or 3 minutes. I'm grabbing 5 days of guide data from your server and building that, and then we broadcast it. Quite often we need to, you know, go in and out of the guide. We don't quite see it instantly, but that's quite normal. You'd expect that. But it takes a few minutes, basically.
But not hours.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And I know you've been in a lot of conversations related to the television manufacturers and on how that ESG data will display on the television. I know currently when we saw the television screen, it really just looks like a 1.0 guide. If you have a digital television at home, what are some of the things you guys are discussing? Because, for example, here we see all those images. So where do you see that on-screen television guide really developing into as we get further into 3.0?
Well, I think there is talk of, you know, and we've had these conversations too of passing additional metadata. It's not necessarily, would have to be slightly off the specification, but, you know, there are ways in which it can be developed further. What's more interesting recently has been the challenges of accommodating the so-called lighthousing, where, you know, you have 2 or 3 stations delivering ATSC 3 services, each belonging to each station in one frequency. And that means that the challenge there is that you have to deliver really 2 pairs of NRT carousels per station, all in that 6, you know, per PLP, because each station has a different PLP, you have 2 NRTs for each set of ESG data, so that each station can broadcast their same content, their guide data for their channel in their own PLP, but in the same 6 megahertz channel. And there are some challenges in getting it right, but the big 3 ATSC 3 TV manufacturers have basically got it right, and it looks good. And it's taken a long time, but unfortunately some parts of the ATSC 3 spec are quite difficult and quite complex and a little bit overspecified, and so the interop activities we've had over the last 2 or 3 years at places like News Press and Gazette and the Pearl Phoenix Lab, that really has made it easier for all the sort of players involved, whether you're on the delivery side or the receiver side. It's been very valuable, and it's showing now. We've got to the point, as you can see, where you're buying a TV from Best Buy. It's an ATSC 3 TV. I turn it on, instantly it tunes to my service, and it's seeing our guide data. And it's taken a while to get there, but it's very much a real standard now.
And of the television sets, is there one that you think is doing a better job of displaying that guide data versus another one?
I can't really. I mean, that's a difficult one because they're all our mates, so we can't really say one or the other. They're all good and they all work. But what's also interesting though is that there's some set-top boxes that are appearing now which are ATSC conformant, and that's very interesting because it means that you don't have to, if you wanted the Samsung, for example, the Samsung is an 8K TV. It's it comes with ATSC 3, but it's still it's quite an expensive TV. Sony's less price maybe, depending on what size you buy. But if you don't want to buy a TV, there's also set-top boxes appearing as well. Some of which that are running on there's a couple that run the Ulticar stack. The HD home run we've been testing here, very good indeed, and seems to handle signal strength issue, because one of the issues we always have here is I've got my antenna right next to our TVs, and so sometimes the signal's too strong, but all these TVs handle that very well indeed. Which is another very encouraging sign, really.
Yeah, that is. And I know that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
You can take with an ATSC 3 signal, as long as it's in a reasonable environment, you can just take an RG6 cable and strip the cable off and get a picture. And if the cable falls on the floor, you still get a picture. I can't go on enough about that it's a completely different level of quality, and the problem I've noticed in a lot of different age groups is people didn't for a long time here really understand that they could get over the air 3.
Right.
When we get to ATSC 3 and you've got UHD content, which I still maintain looks better over the air than the 4K Blu-ray player I have at home. It's really got legs.
What do you think is going to be one of the driving factors that's going to have consumers convert to 3.0?
I think there's a process of education, but I think these days you go into Best Buy and the only TV that's really worth buying is 4K upwards. Really, I mean, an HD is not, unless it's you're using it as a security camera monitor or something. You're going to buy 4K, and so you want that kind of content. You want to be able to view that kind of content. And one of the things that we've been testing here recently with a couple of the manufacturers is SHVC, and this is a feature in ATSC 3. It's scalable HEVC video. So what you can do, and we've seen that work here, and it's one use case would be to put the base layer, which is a low bit rate version of your content, and then you have an enhanced layer, and you can send the base layer over a more robust PLP, say people on mobile want to view it, and the enhanced layer for, quite a little bit less robust, but if you're at home with a decent aerial, you'll get to the two pictures get put together and you see for example, a UHD picture. Well, the test we're doing here recently is to deliver the enhanced layer, the high bit rate, high definition part of the picture over the internet. And that's another interesting fact, consequence of the whole way ATSC 3 has been specified and how it's designed to work. And the idea being, of course, that you can view it as a hybrid. You can view it in hybrid scenarios, either over air or parts of it via the internet. And we have some software here which is similar to SRT, but it's our own version, which allows me, for example, to watch the signal we're broadcasting it here at home over the internet, because it's a TCP IP connection, and the multicast is sort of wrapped in suitable into a suitable structure and sent to a receiver. The receiver unpicks and regenerates the multicast. So there's lots of kind of cool things you can do with a hybrid nature of ATSC 3, and then some of those need to be explored. And then the other thing that we're working with is targeted advertising. What I didn't explain in the diagram is where is it? No, it's not there. Sorry. The thing about the TEM encoder is that if you deliver SCSI 104 markers in baseband or SCSI 35 in IP in an incoming multi-program transport stream, it will normally, depending on the structure of that SCSI, it will convert the dash into a multi-period dash with something called X-links. And this is basically an opportunity for broadcasters to do dynamic targeted advertising. And our work has been with a number of key partners, including News, Press and Gazette, and also a provider of an ad decision system. So we have an application that runs on an ATSC 3 receiver. It sees an X-link and it makes some information can be passed to that receiver through the X-link, which is information that's originated from the SCSI messages and gone into the X-link because it's been handled by the TEM encoder. Then it ends up on the viewer's receiver, and then that calls out to an ad decision server with some of those parameters. And if you know something about the viewer, if it's the difference, for example, between a factory worker and a mother with 5 children, whatever the example is, you can replace, the diaper ad with the Ford ad.
Yep.
And we've been working on this sort of dynamic advertising for 2 or 3 years now, and it's monetizing that is going to be very, very interesting indeed.
Yeah, and for our MediaStar users, we've been part of that same, and it's related to the content side. So it's again having on the content a number identifier that then goes from MediaStar scheduling into the traffic system out to automation. And then if automation makes a last minute change, it would come back into MediaStar so that it would automatically update, publish, and update the ESG Data Service, so that when it gets to that end device and they're trying to do that dynamic ad content, they know exactly what that program is. So it's maybe additional genre information, maybe it's a local program and you've tagged, a particular Ford dealer every time you do breaking news, for example, they want to put an ad in there. Well, that identifier in that program is now on the end device. The ad system is saying, yep, it's that breaking news. Let's go ahead and quickly, dynamically insert an ad. So this is, again, just as a MediaStar is today, we're in that same proof of concept. And our goal is to show that at NAB, which I know, Guy, you and me have been going back and forth as far as what we want to do in NAB. So I know we're going to have a television set up at our booth that we will then be picking up a signal. So can you talk about maybe some things that they'll be able to see between now, it's 4 months from now, interesting, in October, if they would stop by either one of our booths, you know, at NAB?
Absolutely. Well, we're bringing our entire broadcast system, and normally we get FCC. We're normally in the North Hall. I think we're in the Central Hall this time around. Yep. But you know, it's around now that I'll apply to the FCC to get rights to broadcast 1 or 2 channels at 10 watts, which normally in the case of the North Hall, 10 watts perfectly adequate to fill up the hall, and it goes a bit into the outside as well. We will definitely be delivering 2 or 3 ATSC 3 services with your guide data. We're thinking about broadcasting ATSC 1 as well, because we're working on a project there with data casting. We will, and we still have, in fact, an integration with the DASDAC, what used to be called the Monroe, which can push guide data, which can push alerts to ATCaster, and an application we have will display them on the screen. It'll also pull so-called rich media out of the NRT, so you know, alerting is probably the other thing. But I think in addition to your guide, that I think we'll probably have 3 screens. One is standard content with a non-replaced ad, something that you might see on NBC or CBS, you know, that sort of thing. And then we'll place 1 ad depending on a particular demographic or viewer data, and then we'll see the 3rd screen with the alternative ad, and that will all be using this X-Link and SCSI, you know, technology.
Chelsea, yeah. We'll take a break there. Chelsea, are there any questions that have come up?
Yes, another question. How does MediaStar interface with automation? What's the protocol? Is it BXF?
So currently we're working through that. We have in the past have talked to some other automation companies, and it has been BFX. It just really depends on the automation system. So if you're currently working with automation system and you want to see if we can do that integration, just reach out to us. We'd love to get into additional automation systems. We think this is key for 3.0, but it would be nice to have it in place even with 1.0 data to be able to dynamically update MediaStar and push out PSIP data. Again, with PSIP though, the one factor is it goes up to an FTP site and your hardware needs to go look for that new data. So the biggest thing is your hardware today, PSIP, is it looking for it once a day, which is some of your older hardware, or is it looking for it maybe every 5 minutes? So that's one thing to look at. Anything else, Chelsea?
Not at this time, no.
Do you have anything to add to that, Guy, as far as what you've been working with automation systems?
Automation, yeah, well, there's some interesting ones there, and obviously, you know, the one of the things that we're going to carry through the X-Link is of course the famous ad ID or IDA, and that's relatively easy to. There's a descriptor that you can add to the SCSI 35 table that carries. You can format IDs in it in many different ways, so you can carry an IDA mark. And so that way, you know, at the edge, you can determine what people are actually viewing. In terms of other testing, most, you know, we're just going through with our partners. We're just going through a lot of the mandatory FCC requirements to make sure things like closed captioning works well, which is very important, and descriptive audio. You know, there's, for example, the ATEM will take ATSC 1 CEA 608 closed captions and convert it into the ATSC 3 equivalent, which is IMSC 1. And you know, we've been testing 2 audios, 2 different languages of captions. And it's actually quite, even in the Bay Area, it's quite difficult to find an incoming signal that has 2 language captions. But you know, there's some stuff on NBC that comes in, and you know, so we've been doing that, descriptive audio, guide data, and just making sure that everything is going to look in really good shape for for when the standard is widely deployed, which is happening very soon. And then there's some scenarios that business models that still need to be considered. There's a lot of things like, what do you do? Okay, so if you look at our Nensis, we're at whatever it is, we're 21 megabits per second, and those are fairly robust PRPs. Well, what do you do? Question broadcasters often ask us is, well, what do you do with the extra bandwidth, right? Because I've got to buy content to put there. We can do different camera angles, but it wouldn't be impossible to do a deal with Netflix, for example, to broadcast the 3 most viewed movies that month in spare capacity, and then you do a revenue share on it. Advertising, with interactive content, so an ATSC 3 application that's broadcast. Generally broadcasters, we've seen this in the cable space with HSN for a long time. I think we still are, in fact, broadcasting a cable application with HSN. It's an EBIF application, really old technology. But our experience is that broadcasters pay more if it's an enhanced ad. If you can type in your mobile number and get a link to test drive a Ford car or whatever it is, generally broadcasters pay for more, pay that extra for that. So there's a whole bunch of things like that should be discussed with the broadcasters. Using the NRT data carousels for delivering new firmware to equipment in cars is another one. And ATSC 3 has been written taking all these scenarios, for the most part, it's been written taking all these scenarios into consideration.
And that kind of leads to some of the conversations that I know you and I have had. So in MediaStar today, a programmer can enter in links to their website, to live streaming, to Facebook and social media, and we can post it onto their online guide today, and also send it out to the signal. So one of the things that I know that we've been discussing is with 3.0, to be able to send out that additional links, that link to something that's going to show up in the guide. How do you see that happening, or where do you think the next steps is to make that happen?
Well, I think that if I remember rightly, and I'd have to, dig into the specs or ask somebody to do it for me. But I think that the guide, what you can and can't put in the guide data is quite restricted. But there's no reason why you can't put additional metadata into a carousel, an NRT carousel. Absolutely no reason at all. And then you just need a blind ATSC app that can pull it up and display it if it's requested. Yeah, but and the whole audience measurement is another thing. There are companies that deal with audience, buy and sell audience measurement. In the past, for broadcasters, not having an intrinsic return path like the cable companies that always do, because it's a piece of cable, right? With most TVs, 90% of them or whatever, it used to be 80s, probably a bit more than that. They're smart TVs, they're connected to the internet, and there's a capability. It's running, as part of the ATSC 3 stack. It's an interactive environment, so you can collect viewing information. And all kinds of data mining can be applied to that. Is there a reason why 20% of households in a particular region at 5 o'clock change from CBS to ABC? There's something they don't like about the news or whatever it is, or that particular program. You can, and there are companies, one in particular we used to work with called for Media, real experts in doing this. And this is very valuable information.
And that's one concept that we're trying to work through as well, related to programming data, because so for currently all ComScore users, local broadcast channel stations use MediaStar to send their ads to run. So we were looking and working out when we get into 3.0, how can we connect that entire loop? If someone like a ComScore can get that, data, that user data, plus and it's directly connected, maybe through an IDER number that's gone through the system, originally starting in MediaStar, And then when they send their ComScore as one reports, it's got that same IDER number that actually aired, and then it connects to what was actually on the end device, and you've got a much quicker and more robust and I think accurate information of what that user was actually watching.
Well, and yeah, and one of the reasons why, there's several reasons why we work with the partners we work with, and they're all very good people to work with for a start. But we started working with a lot of the European companies early on the delivery side because they'd been working with DVB-T2 for years. So the delta from DVB-T2 to ATSC 3 was pretty small. So they got, the Unisoft broadcast gateway and the Pro TV were deployed in Korea, 4 years ago or something like that. But also the big picture of how all these components work together. And if you do, for instance, as a broadcaster, you sell an interactive enhancement with the Ford ad that says, where's the nearest Ford dealership to my zip code, which you previously entered. That would mean that the traffic and billing system would have to communicate to something further downstream to signal that the application should be paid out during the Ford ad, because you can't play it out in the middle of the Pepsi ad or whatever it is. You have to play it out in the right time. It has to be synchronized. That's an integration between the traffic and billing system, possibly your automation system, and the root server. And the way you do it very simply in our setup is that Wide Orbit, the billing system that we're working with the most, would call probably REST APIs to push that application and the signaling, the held signaling, to ATCaster. And then at the right time, the application will come out with the ad. So there's a whole bunch of cool things that we have to consider to get right, but we're all spending a lot of time doing that.
Yeah, it's exciting, at least from our standpoint. We can't wait to see as 3.0 continues to roll out and we get more adoption from consumers. Chelsea, we'll take another break. Any other questions, anything related?
There's one more question. How would Netflix be integrated into data casting?
I'll let you take that, Guy.
It would, the Netflix server would quite easily, again, use the REST APIs to push data to an NRT that we're delivering. And that's exactly the process we're doing for delivering the Titan guide data right now. So that would be one simple way of doing it. You could use the UI. You could write your own Java code and called Java APIs, but the REST APIs are a pretty good way of doing it. Yeah, and the Netflix idea comes from the fact that some of the mid-size cable companies are already doing this. So in the middle of that, because it, although it's kind of competing with the TV that the programming they're delivering, it works. It's one of those things where it works for both parties because the viewer gets a better picture. Because what happens is the Netflix pushes the best movie, the most viewed movies, overnight to a server in the cable company's head end. And so when that viewer uses Netflix and buys that movie, there is some revenue. I'm not sure about the revenue share, but the viewing experience is better, and that reflects well on both the cable company and Netflix. It's both completely in their interest to get it right.
So if a station, for example, had a database full of VOD content, could they then somehow set that up instead of like a Netflix, like here's, recommend some additional content. If you like the show that you're watching right now live and you want to watch some additional, they could send some, hey, here's some additional VOD you could watch and direct it that way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried I tried the VOD took me years on Comcast at home. The library is absolutely spectacular. I found a movie that was 15, 25 years old. It's so obscure, and they had it, and it was, it was another $4. You can, you watch a bit of it. It's active for 7 days or something like that. You can do that with ATSC 3. I mean, the PBS stations, for instance, well, all the stations have got a massive amount of content, and it's beautifully generally filmed. It's proper quality stuff, and a lot of us like watching it, you know, and so this could, and we tested with a company called OpenZNet, which is they've been bought now, but News Press and Gazette, they provided an SVOD app, and we tested it at one or two or three of the interops. You know, it's an app that shows a bunch, and you have a VOD server, and you know, there's a JSON exchange that says here are all the available titles, here are all the little thumbnails, so you can see what, you know, who's in the movie, maybe a little description of who's in the movie. You select it by like a mosaic grid, and it plays out. You know, it's VOD, but it's not being played down a cable, but is being broadcast over the air. You know? So it's a very interesting opportunity. And I, for one, there's lots of cool stuff I'd like to watch. You know, the broadcast stuff that you know, that we can't generally get access to. It's in the library somewhere.
Or I know a lot of times that they're even doing today, local broadcasters will, you know, do a smaller clip doing their news, and then they'll say to see the full story, go to their website or an OTT platform. So now the idea is they could put that link right into the 3.0 signal. The consumer, oh, I want to watch this more. I could go right now to watch more of that, you know, more of that story. Chelsea, it looks like we have another question. I think it might be related. If you want to go ahead and ask that one.
Yes, it's with the consumer box, for example, Apple TV, Roku, with the Netflix app, have to include a 3.0 chip in order to receive the Netflix content from a local television station.
Yes, I mean you need a way of receiving an ATSC 3 signal, but you know there are companies that are producing USB sticks that contain ATSC 3 receivers. I mean, one that we've been working with in the interops and a lot, they're a key partner to, is the Red Zone receiver from Airwaves. And you know, you plug that into, it'll work in Windows. I've got it running actually with Linux, and it receives, I can tune into our signal here, and we've done some extensions to it, in fact, so it produces multicast, but you can put that straight into a VLC player. You know, so you know, they're cheaper ATSC 3 receivers coming out, and I think there'll be more products like that surfacing, especially now. Surfacing, you know, it's very much a reality, and it's deployed in 60 cities or wherever it is now. It's, you know, number increases pretty much on a weekly basis.
Got about 10 minutes left. I know what I'll do when we send out the video link. We'll include both my contact information and Guy's contact information as well. So if you have any additional questions for either one of us, or you want to reach out and find more information or set up demos, you'll be able to have that in the email. But with that, guys, is there anything else you'd like to add related to what you've been doing with testing with 3.0 and guide services, or just 3.0 in general?
No, thanks very much for your support. I mean, it's really helpful when we're testing guide data to have a mechanism to create it from a UI, and then, you know, and we came up with several different interesting issues with the guides, the subtleties really to do with the way that I created the guide data. So it's been a very interesting learning experience, you know, and having that ability with MediaStar has been very helpful for us.
Great. Chelsea, one last time, any other questions?
It doesn't appear to be.
All right, unless you have anything, Guy, we would just want to thank everyone for your time today. This was another one of our guide data services. We wanted to kind of jump more into the future and kind of go over what we're currently working with related to 3.0, and even how the tools that you might have today with TitanTV you might be able to utilize, and then just introduce you to some of the technology that's out there. If your station's interested in some of the integrations, again, reach out to Guy's team at Unisoft and they'll be able to help you out. And if you're going to just be at NAB in October, please stop by our booths. We're both in Central Hall. I think we're only about 4 or 5 booths from each other. So you'll be able to see that live demo, the live guide in there, and how we're utilizing MediaStar to update it and push it out. And then Guy can show you all the fun stuff he's been working on. Any other words, last minute words, Guy?
No, thanks for everybody for their time.
And if you guys enjoyed this and you want to learn more about 3.0, let us know. We can always put on additional webinars, or if there's additional topics. We have found these very beneficial for all of our clients, so let us know. Thanks again. And thanks again, Guy, for your time today.
Thanks, Heidi.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.